watching CNN and this is Connect the World. I'm Lynda Kinkade in Atlanta, filling in for Becky Anderson. Welcome back. Well, I want to get back to one of our top stories. Investigations underway in Venezuela after a strange attack that the country's president says was a bid to kill him. President Maduro was mid-speech when officials say low-flying drones exploded right in front of him. Maduro was quickly evacuated from the stage, and then a few hours later, he came back on TV to say he was unharmed following the alleged assassination attempt. Well, Stefano Pozzebon is in Venezuela, not too far from the capital, and he joins us now on the phone. Stefano, there's a few stories going around about what may have caused the explosion. The government saying drones, some other sources saying a gas explosion in a nearby building. Some even touting conspiracy theories that this was a staged event by the government. What can you tell us?
Yes, exactly, Lynda. There are still a lot of unanswered questions. Why did such a close-tied military event, for example, take place in Caracas' most central avenue? Normally, this type of events happen at the military headquarters. How many drones were in the air, if any, and how many people have already been arrested in relation with the case? Because late last night, President Maduro said that the investigation was clean and fast, and some people have already been arrested. And as you said, Lynda, Venezuela is not new to conspiracy theories or even unclear facts. Both President Maduro and his predecessor, Hugo Chavez, claimed many times to be the target of assassination plans, and the tension is never too far away from Caracas. But today also, Lynda, is the day where the diplomatic corps in Caracas will gather to hear from Foreign Minister Jose Arreaza, because late last night, President Maduro accused his Colombian counterpart, Juan Manuel Santos, and ultra-right groups, what he called ultra-right groups in Caracas, Bogota, and Miami, to be behind the attack. So these attacks has already reached an international stage. And President Maduro also called on U.S. President Donald Trump to join the fight against what he called terrorist groups committing international attacks. So we have already reached the diplomatic international stage for the consequences of this unclear incident in the center of Caracas, Lynda.
And Stefano, Colombia was quick to dismiss that blame, weren't they? What did they say?
Yes, exactly. The Colombian Foreign Ministry was very fast to reject any sort of accusation or allegations coming out of Caracas. We've heard that President Santos, Lynda, yesterday was celebrating the baptism of his grandchild, and the Colombian ministry and the Colombian government has rejected any sort of interference, any sort of intervention within in Venezuelan state affairs, Lynda.
All right, Stefano Pozzebon for us, not too far from the capital. Good to have you with us. Thanks so much. Well, for more on this, I'm joined by Jennifer McCoy. She's a professor of political science at Georgia State University. You've written extensively on Venezuelan politics and the ongoing economic crisis. Good to have you with us today. Firstly, let's start with the fallout from this, because we know the government has already started purging some military officials. Some arrests have taken place. Can we expect more of that?
Certainly. I think the most dangerous outcome of this is that the government will use it as a further excuse or justification to crack down even more on dissidents, critics within the military, within the opposition, and it's could increase its repressive stance that it's been taking to achieve its primary goal, which is to stay in power.
What's the likelihood that this was an assassination attempt by a foreign government or foreigners in another country? Or what's the chance it was a staged event by the Venezuelan government?
Well, I think the least likely is that it was staged by a foreign government. The accusation against Colombia or against the United States is a familiar refrain from this government, drumming up foreign conspiracy theories. But I think that's unlikely because they know that it would also create a great deal of chaos in Venezuela. Whether it was staged, that's a possibility. It could have just been an accident that the government then used to rally support, rally around the flag type of support by blaming others for it. But whatever it was, whether it was real or from within Venezuela, possible, or staged, or an accident the government was using, it shows the vulnerability of this government.
And I want to just remind our viewers of an incident in June 2017. A rogue pilot flew a helicopter into the Supreme Court of Venezuela and dropped grenades on that building. The pilot then called on Venezuelans to rise up against President Maduro's government. What parallels do you see between that and this?
Well, certainly that was an attempt. That person and his group later engaged in a firefight with the government and was killed. So it seemed that, you know, he really was trying to drum up a rebellion, an uprising against the government. So that's why it is possible that this was an inside attempt against the president, because there's a great deal of dissatisfaction, not only among the population, but I think within the military. We're seeing desertions within the military, as well as the purge, the arrests that you mentioned.
I want to also touch on the economic crisis, which you've covered a lot. Venezuela clearly is in a great economic crisis. The International Monetary Fund says that Venezuela's inflation is expected to hit 1,000,000% by the end of this year. A third of the population is unemployed, and millions of people are in need of food and medicine. Economists, of course, many of them are blaming President Maduro. Some have blamed his predecessor, Hugo Chavez, for decades of mismanagement. How long can Maduro last in his presidency, given the situation?
Certainly people have been predicting his fall for a long time, as they predicted Chavez's fall. And the opposition has very frequently thought that they had an advantage and could, with major protests, strikes, and this kind of thing in the past, oust these leaders, and they've failed. So I hesitate to say that he has a limited amount of time. Many people look to Zimbabwe as a parallel to say, look how long Robert Mugabe stayed in power, also with millions or billions of percent of inflation. So with repression and by cowing the population with intimidation and jailings, and simply making them put all their time in finding food, you know, it's possible that the government could stay in power for some time.
Incredible. And just as you were speaking, I understand Maduro has just tweeted saying that I thank the people and governments of the world who have spoken out against the attack that was intended to end my life. Venezuela will continue to travel the democratic, independent and socialist path. So clearly he's trying to come out stronger from this, right?
Yes, although I think he probably looks weaker from it.
Great to get your perspective. Jennifer McCoy, thanks so much for coming in today.
Thank you, Lynda.
Appreciate it. Well, live from Atlanta, this is Connect the World. Coming up, a standoff in Zimbabwe. We look at what's next for the country after last week's vote and the unrest and disputes that have followed it. Stay with us.